Hey there, and thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to watch this. And if you decide to hit that subscribe button, it honestly means a lot to me. Now, let's get into it. I'm Richard. When I booked a cruise, my intention was simple, to spend some quality, uninterrupted time with my girlfriend. I pictured it as a romantic break, just the two of us, away from everyday distractions, soaking in the ocean views, sharing quiet dinners, and reconnecting on a deeper level. But things didn't unfold the way I had imagined. Rather than the calm, intimate trip I envisioned, I was blindsided. Unbeknownst to me, Andrea had altered the reservation. The cabin I paid for was downgraded, and the difference? She used that money to upgrade the rooms of a few friends she had secretly invited along, friends I didn't even know were coming. She didn't see what was coming next, but I didn't back down. My reaction was intentional. It was a way to draw a line, both for her and for myself, to make it clear what I would and wouldn't accept. Let me rewind a bit. Andrea and I had been together for 3 years. We met through a mutual friend during a casual dinner party. There was an instant connection, the kind of conversation that flows effortlessly, like you've known each other forever. That's how it felt with her. We ended up chatting long into the night. What captivated me was her energy. She was lively, expressive, and always had something interesting to say. Later, she told me it was the way I listened that drew her in. She'd often felt ignored or dismissed in past relationships, like her emotions were a burden. But with me, she felt heard. That meant something to both of us. It seemed like we'd each found something we didn't know we needed. After that night, we stayed in touch. Texts became phone calls. Before long, we were spending weekends together. A few months later, we officially became a couple. Like most new romances, those early months were filled with excitement. Sure, we had our hiccups, but it felt worth investing in. About a year into the relationship, Andrea made a bold move. She left her job at a corporate firm to launch her own freelance business. I stood behind her 100%. Even though I had my private doubts about the risks, I admired her courage and believed she could pull it off. But things didn't take off the way she had planned. Work came in slowly. Finances got tight. Eventually, she asked if she could move into my place to ease the pressure while she tried to build her client base. I didn't think twice. I said yes. From that point on, we shared everything: expenses, schedules, responsibilities, and the emotional weight that came with all of it. It wasn't always easy, but I stayed because I genuinely cared. I saw the good in her, even during the rough patches. Andrea is someone who wears her emotions on her sleeve. You never had to guess what was on her mind. Her expression said it all. If something upset her, she'd make it known right away. She had a short fuse, and sometimes small issues would blow up into major arguments. Admitting fault wasn't her strong suit. Even when she knew she was in the wrong, she'd either argue around it or shut down completely. Hearing her say, "You were right," was extremely rare. Still, she always claimed she was trying to grow, and I wanted to believe that. Outside of disagreements, she was magnetic. She had a fiery wit, bold opinions, and a presence that lit up every space she entered. Her intentions were good, even if her execution could be abrasive. She'd joke, "Without me, your life would be nothing but leftovers and early bedtimes." And she wasn't totally wrong. I'm not someone who thrives in noisy crowds. I'm most comfortable with a predictable rhythm, quiet nights in, good food, a favorite show, and meaningful conversation. Andrea was wired differently. She thrived on constant movement. She loved brunches, spontaneous getaways, cocktails with friends. She lived for the buzz of activity. That difference in our personalities became a subtle but ongoing source of friction. She'd make remarks like, "Do you even enjoy going out?" Or, "I feel like I'm the only one creating memories here." Meanwhile, I was just trying to get through the work week. My job at a bank's customer service line left me emotionally drained, fielding complaints and stress all day. It wasn't that I didn't want to have fun, I just didn't have much energy left at the end of the day. That disconnect between us never quite disappeared. It wasn't enough to break us apart, but it kept us slightly out of sync. She saw me as disengaged. I saw her as lacking understanding. We were both trying to connect, but speaking completely different emotional languages. When our third anniversary approached, I wanted to do something meaningful. Not just another dinner or basic gift. I wanted to do something that said, "You still matter to me." I brainstormed for days, but nothing felt quite right. Then I remembered a moment from earlier that year. Andrea had been looking through photos of her cousin's cruise. She lit up describing it. Fancy dinners, late-night buffets, sunsets over the sea. It clearly left an impression. But for me, open water was a personal fear. I've always been uneasy around deep water. Still, I decided this was about more than my anxiety. It was about us, about creating something memorable. So I made a plan. After a rough shift at work, I came home and told her I was organizing something special for our anniversary. I'd already arranged time off. We were going on a cruise, just the two of us. Her face went from stunned to glowing. She wrapped me in a hug, kissed me, and said it was the perfect idea. Instead of making the arrangements myself, I let her take charge. She'd mentioned a particular cruise line she liked, one with elegant decor and panoramic views. I figured she'd get exactly what she wanted that way, and I'd avoid accidentally picking something she didn't like. That same night, she opened her laptop and dove into planning. She looked genuinely excited, completely absorbed in the details. About an hour later, she said she'd found the ideal cruise. It lined up perfectly with our anniversary dates. We'd be setting sail on the exact day. That added an extra layer of meaning. As I lay in bed that night, I felt proud of what I'd done. It felt like the most heartfelt gesture I'd made in our relationship. I truly believed we were in for something unforgettable. What I didn't realize was just how far things would veer off course. 2 nights after the booking, we were having a laid-back evening when Andrea brought something up. She asked how I'd feel if a few of her friends came along on the cruise. Her tone was light, almost offhand, but I knew right away it wasn't a casual suggestion. This trip was supposed to be just us. I told her the truth, that I wasn't thrilled by the idea. I reminded her that this was planned as a private celebration for our relationship milestone. She paused for a moment, her expression unreadable, and then simply said, "Just a thought." Forget I mentioned it. I took her at her word. She didn't bring it up again, so I assumed we were aligned once more. What I didn't know was that, behind the scenes, everything had already changed. Just days before we were supposed to set off on our cruise, everything between us fell apart in a way I never saw coming. We had an argument, not the usual surface-level disagreement, but something that hit deeper, something that cut straight to the core. I won't unpack every detail, but it came from her crossing a line I didn't think needed explaining. I felt completely disregarded, no ambiguity about it. I made an effort to explain how her actions affected me, hoping she'd see things from my side. But instead of engaging, she retreated. Her responses became cold and mechanical, her tone distant. In the following days, our communication felt empty. No depth, no warmth. It was like talking to someone who had already mentally left. After giving myself a little time to settle down, I tried to repair the damage. I figured maybe she just needed breathing room, and with the trip looming, I assumed she'd eventually come around. I made attempts to lighten the mood, cracked jokes, tried to ease the tension. None of it made a dent. Every time I brought up the cruise, hoping it would be something we could look forward to together, she dismissed it like it was irrelevant. Physically, she was there, but emotionally, she was gone. The more I tried to close the gap, the further she drifted. Still, I held on to the idea, maybe foolishly, that the cruise would be our turning point. I imagined us boarding the ship, reconnecting away from everyday distractions, finding our rhythm again. I had no idea how wrong I was. On the day of departure, Andrea and I showed up at the port with our luggage and boarding materials in hand. Despite everything that had happened, I was trying to stay positive. Even with my usual anxiety about being out on open water, I was focused on the chance to spend quality time with her. The terminal was a whirlwind. People hurrying in every direction, loudspeaker announcements blaring, suitcases clattering across the floor. Andrea moved with precision. As soon as we stepped inside, she veered off toward the counter. She passed me my luggage, saying she'd handle check-in. I didn't question it. She's always preferred to take charge of logistics. Soon after, a staff member handed me my key card. I glanced at it to confirm the room number. Interior cabin. That's when I knew something was off. This wasn't what we had agreed on. Andrea had said she'd booked a suite, something special to mark our anniversary. This trip was supposed to mean something. I turned to her and held up the card, asking if there had been some kind of mistake. She looked at me and calmly said, "No." I changed it. "Figured you'd want your own space, considering everything." At first I thought she was joking. I waited for her to pull out the real card and flash a smile, but she didn't. Her face stayed expressionless. Then I saw them, her friends, rolling their bags into the terminal. In that moment, everything became painfully clear. Not only had she downgraded my room, but she'd invited the very people I'd asked her not to bring. To make it worse, they were all staying in upgraded rooms with ocean views, while I'd been banished to a windowless room in the bowels of the ship. It felt like the floor dropped out from under me. Still, I didn't cause a scene. I stood frozen, surrounded by the noise and movement of the terminal. I gave her one last chance to explain. I asked, "Andrea, this was supposed to be a special trip for us. Why would you do this?" She looked at me and said, "We are together. We're on the same cruise." There wasn't a trace of regret in her voice. She'd made her decision, and in that moment, the truth hit me. If this is how she could treat me now, what else was she capable of down the line? We weren't married. There was nothing binding us. And clearly, whatever emotional connection had existed was gone. So I made my choice. I grabbed my suitcase, turned around, and walked out of the terminal without saying another word. Whether she noticed or not didn't matter anymore. Once I reached the parking lot, I blocked her number. I blocked her on every social platform I could think of. While she sailed away on a 2-week trip that I had paid for, I was cutting every remaining tie. I wasn't waiting for apologies. I was claiming my peace. That was the day I put myself first. I knew exactly when her cruise was supposed to end. The calendar reminder still sat on my phone. I used the time she was gone to take care of everything. There wasn't a shred of doubt in my mind. I went through the apartment, packed up all of her things, and neatly placed the boxes in the garage, not out of spite, but to make it final. I had the locks changed. She still had a key, and I didn't want her walking back in like nothing had happened. When she finally came back, I was home. I heard the sound of her key in the door, then a pause, followed by knocking. I didn't open it. I spoke through the door, calm and composed. "Did you enjoy your cruise? On your own?" There was a moment of silence before her voice rose, filled with anger and confusion. She asked why I'd left, why I hadn't warned her, why I'd gone silent. I let her finish, then replied steadily, "Andrea, there's nothing left to talk about. It's done. Wherever you're going next, go there. You're not coming back here." At first she lashed out, angry, defensive. But once she saw I wasn't budging, her tone shifted. She started pleading, saying we should sit down, have a conversation, figure things out. But I had no interest in dragging it out any further. I repeated myself, "This isn't up for debate. My decision is final." She lingered outside for a while, maybe thinking I'd changed my mind. I didn't. Eventually, she left. A few hours later, she called me from someone else's phone. I answered. She asked how we were going to handle things moving forward. I told her there was nothing to figure out. Her belongings were packed and ready. All she needed to do was choose a time to pick them up. When she came by, I opened the garage door and stood nearby as she loaded her things. She didn't say much. Every so often, she glanced at me, like she didn't recognize the person standing there, like she was trying to decide if I was really serious. But I didn't flinch. I didn't smile. I stayed silent until she was done. She left without a goodbye. After it all ended, I expected everything to fade quietly. But that wasn't what happened. Whenever I crossed paths with mutual acquaintances, the same question kept coming up. What happened with you and Andrea? And I could tell by the way they asked, they'd already heard her version, the one where we simply grew apart, where we both agreed it was time to move on. Calm, mutual, clean. But that wasn't the truth, not remotely. She made a calculated decision to disregard me completely, and I walked away. This wasn't a slow drift, it was a betrayal, and my response was to stand up for myself. At first I stayed silent. I believed the truth didn't need defending. But the more I heard her version circulating, the more I realized how easily people accepted it. Because she got to them first. And I wasn't going to let that be the closing chapter. So when people asked, I told them exactly what happened. I told them how I had paid for the cruise to celebrate our anniversary, how Andrea secretly downgraded my cabin, invited people I didn't want there, and gave them better rooms, and how she expected me to just go along with it. I told them that in that moment I saw her clearly for the first time, and I left. Some were shocked, some apologized for assuming, but I wasn't telling my side for sympathy. I didn't need people to take sides. I told the truth because our story didn't deserve to end with a lie.